introduce our speaker for introductions today. That is Dean Johnson.
Thank you, Lynette. Thanks to all of you who are here today. Thank you to the Department of Government for partnering in this annual event that provides us all an opportunity to examine and understand the U.S. Constitution in our current context. The Constitution is always relevant, and the topic at the center of this year's partnership with the League of Women Voters of Kentucky illustrates this well. Redistricting is the process used to define the districts for seats in the United States House of Representatives, in state legislatures, and local government seats. And in 2017, the League of Women Voters of Kentucky formed a committee to study redistricting and create a report to raise awareness of the importance of redistricting and provide recommendations to improve the process in Kentucky at the state level. The Kentucky Fair Maps campaign is advocating for transparency in Kentucky's redistricting process. Initial efforts to create a citizen-led redistricting advisory commission failed, so the League has refocused and is calling for an open, transparent process with robust opportunities for public input. Fair Maps forums, such as the one being hosted here today at EKU, are designed to share draft maps and gather public comments for creating recommended maps to legislators. EKU is delighted to be working with the League of Women Voters. So I hope you'll join me in welcoming our two panelists today. Our first panelist, Cindy Heine, is a graduate of the University of Michigan School of Nursing. She is retired from the Pritchard Committee for Academic Excellence, an organization advocating for education in Kentucky. She is a member of the board of the League of Women Voters of Kentucky and the State Redistricting Committee, and serves as a legislative liaison for the State League. She resides in Lexington. Susan Perkins Weston is a graduate of Swarthmore and Yale Law School. She is an independent consultant providing education policy and data analysis in Kentucky.
Recording in progress.
She is a member of the League of Women Voters Board of Directors and serves as the map developer for the League's redistricting committee. She resides in Danville. So please join me in welcoming our two panelists.
Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Professor Neblett, and thank you, Dr. Bose, for that kind introduction. We really appreciate the partnership of the Department of Government as our local partner here today. They helped us organize and get this set up, so we really appreciate it. Thank you. Our purpose today is to share information about redistricting in Kentucky. As we walked around the state and talked to people, a lot of folks say, gee, I didn't know that, or gosh, I didn't realize that. We're going to share some draft maps that our draft developer, Susan Perkins Weston, has drawn. And keep in mind, those are just drafts, but we want you to see what logical fair maps could look like. And then we're going to ask for your feedback. We're going to share the maps. There'll be opportunities for you online, and if you don't want it online, we've got forms that you can do it in hard copy if you want it, because we want input from the public. After this series of forums, we'll take that input, we'll redraw the maps and share them with legislators, and I just started calling them our people-powered fair maps, because they will have been done by citizens with citizen input. In the past, both parties are guilty now. Redistricting has been done behind closed doors. People haven't really seen the maps. They haven't had any input until they're done and signed. So we think that should be different this round. Redistricting is core to our democracy. and district maps should be drawn to assure that our voices have equal weight and each of our communities has equal access to the decision-making processes in Frankfort and Washington. These maps will be in place for 10 years, 2030, before they draw them again. And we believe they should be drawn in an open and transparent process. Since the legislature is not listening to us, at least not yet, they haven't, we are here to listen to you and hear what you have to say. I'm going to do a very brief overview on redistricting, and then I'm going to turn it over to Susan, and she will walk you through maps and feedback. All right. Redistricting basics. After every 10-year census data is collected, states around the country are required to redraw their maps to adjust for the population shifts, increases some places, decreases in others. And in Kentucky, that means new maps will be drawn for our 6 U.S. congressional seats, our 38 Kentucky Senate seats, and our 100 Kentucky House seats. And then local communities will use this data for their school board, their councils, their local races. When will this happen in Kentucky? This is a big question, and we do not know the answer to this question. We've been asking, and we get lots of responses. One possibility is the governor could call a special session, and the legislature could draw these lines and put them into law this fall. That would require the governor's cooperation in calling a session. We're not sure what's going to happen there. That may or may not happen. Second possibility is the legislature could do it in early January, early in the 2022 session. The problem with January is that the filing deadline for candidates is January 7th. Legislators, candidates for legislature, can't file until they know what district they're in. So they would have to push that filing deadline back. It's a possibility. So the legislature could work real hard, get some maps together, get into the session in a very quick order, get these maps drawn, filed, and then move the deadline back so people have a chance to file. The third possibility is that they will just simply ignore the deadline, have the maps that are drawn go into effect in 2024 instead of for the 2022 elections, and just do them sometime during the session. So those are the 3 possibilities. I wish I could tell you which one was going to happen. I can't. Now, redistricting can make it easier or harder for voters to learn about candidates, for citizens to communicate with their representatives. If your legislator lives in the town where you live, or is at least close, you can either drive to get to them, maybe you run into them at church or the grocery store. We just think that could be facilitated if we had good compact districts. It can make it easier or harder for parties to compete with each other. And one of the problems that we see is safe districts where there's no need for competition, no need for discussion. So we think that's important. It also can make it easier or harder for members of racial minorities to elect the candidates they prefer, and it also can make it easier or harder for regions within a state to get their distinctive interests heard. So rural versus urban, areas where there's high unemployment versus areas where employment is good. There are real different needs and interests to be dealt with. Why should we care? Why should you care? Well, we believe, and Constitution Day is a good day to think about it, that voters should elect their representatives rather than the other way around. And past practice has been legislators choose their voters. That is not a democratic process. Second reason, and I mentioned this a few seconds ago, in safe districts, elected officials don't have to compromise. It leads to polarization and gridlock. These legislators in safe districts are often chosen in the primary when there are fewer voters, the voter turnout is lower, and when independent voters, people registered as independents, can't vote. So that's another reason why we think that we should have fair maps. And then a third reason is poorly drawn lines can lead to very expensive lawsuits, costly in terms of time and money. And that happened in 2012. The Democratic House and the Republican Senate were both sued in 2012 because their maps were not acceptable to the courts. It took until 2013 to get those lines drawn. So what's the best approach to creating fair maps? Well, the very best approach that we would love to have is an independent commission created by bipartisan and some nonpartisan folks who would be selected. There are any number of ways to select them. And that committee, and in several states they have these commissions, would actually draw the lines, and that would be that. That's not going to happen in Kentucky. We would have to have a constitutional amendment, and that's just not feasible. Next best is an advisory commission. The League proposed an advisory commission in 20 and 21 sessions. Those ideas were rejected, didn't get hearings in any committees. The advisory commission would be, again, a similar group appointed by both parties and some independents thrown in. They would study the maps, they would study the data, hold hearings, and then provide recommended maps to the legislature. And then the legislature is constitutionally responsible, so they would make the final decision and they could do whatever they wanted, but at least they would have had good public input. That too was rejected, and so what we're pushing for now is the idea of transparent, open process that is that welcomes good, robust public input. We did get, with a legislator, House Joint Resolution filed to that effect, and that didn't go anywhere either. Now, the draft maps from the League that you'll be seeing today, we used 2020 census data to develop them. We did it to inform the public like we're doing today, to advocate for fairer, simpler maps, and then to gather input like we're doing, and create recommended maps that we will share with the legislature. The legal rules that we followed, and these are things that the legislature has to follow, is one person, one vote. Districts need to be as close to equal size as possible. For U.S. congressional seats, they have to be very, very close. For Kentucky Senate and Kentucky House seats, they have to be within 5% of the number that's to be in each district. Then there has to be opportunity. Redistricting must provide districts of opportunity where minority voters have a chance to elect representatives of their own choosing. And then one other thing that's true in Kentucky that makes this even more challenging, as Susan can attest, is county lines. Kentucky Senate and House districts must not divide counties except when needed to get the population numbers right. And what you'll see in a few minutes is what happens when those counties get divided. Now, we added some additional goals. One is compactness. As I said earlier, if the districts are compact, it's easier to get to your legislators, and we think that just makes more sense. One other thing that we did was, or Susan did, was she focused on county seats. When a county had to be divided, she worked very carefully to try to be sure the county seat was not divided. But we have a number of examples in Kentucky now where county seats are split into 2 or 3 or 4 different districts. We were indifferent to incumbents. We paid no attention to where incumbents lived. And that's going to make us a few enemies on both sides of the aisle, I'm sure. And then awareness of race. When dividing the larger counties, we looked for compact districts that did not dilute opportunities for Black or Hispanic voters to elect or vote for candidates of their choosing. So those are our parameters. The legislature does not have to follow those. Now, one huge piece of information that is going to give everybody headaches, whoever draws the maps, is the changes in population. In this map, the red counties, the ones in red and pink, are counties where the population numbers have increased. The deeper the color, the greater the population increase. The blue counties are counties where population has declined. The deeper the color, the greater the decline in population. As you can see, Eastern Kentucky and Western Kentucky have lost population. Those numbers are going to shift, and those districts are going to have to get bigger in order to have the number of citizens in those communities to create a district. The districts in red are going to be a challenge because those districts are going to get smaller in order to accommodate the correct number of people. So I am going to turn it over to Susan, and she's going to proceed from here. And thank you again for being here.
Good morning, everyone. Is my voice coming through well enough? I'm going to back up slightly because I hadn't thought Constitution Day when I prepared this. So I'll go back, give you a quick constitutional overview of these rules. One person, one vote is an interpretation by the Supreme Court of what is required by our magnificent 14th Amendment. We didn't honor that until the 1960s, but it's been a really important legal principle since then. It was, of course, called one man, one vote, but we upgraded sometime in the 1980s. But that's an absolute constitutional provision. The opportunity rule is from the Voting Rights Act, and the Voting Rights Act comes from our Constitution under the enabling clauses of both the magnificent 14th and the essential 15th. These are victories basically won at Gettysburg, but codified in the years right after that. So that's an important piece. The county lines piece takes the Kentucky Constitution, which says don't divide counties at all, and tries to figure out how that goes with one person, one vote. And what the Supreme Court has said is, don't divide counties unless you have to. And rather than equal requires within 100 votes or so, equal can be within that 5%, but that's an actual practice of constitutional law that they engaged in to figure out how two rules that couldn't work together go together. So we are operating with the Constitution right through this process. One other smart aleck comment. We're going to talk about the U.S. House, the Kentucky Senate, and the Kentucky House, because the Senate doesn't get redistricted. Or as we say at my house, it was gerrymandered in 1789. So let me drop you into maps. You have a copy of this. To explain the handout, we gave you the first two current maps, the districts people vote in right now, on the two-sided piece. Everything in the stapled package except the last page is what we're proposing for discussion, and the best thing that can happen for us today is if you tell us what we need to fix. That's our big goal. But take a look at this map, and I'm going to ask you to vote twice, just by a show of hands. So take a minute to think, which district looks weirdest to you, and which district looks second weirdest? I bet there are votes out there. So, who thinks District 6 is the weirdest? It's green and in the middle. How about 5? 4 up in the north? I see contenders for 4. How about 3? 3 in because of size maybe? How about 2? And how about 1? Yeah, I think of that as sort of a dragon with a tail. I'm pretty sure that got the majority. For second weirdest, I'm going to skip 5 and 6 because people weren't bothered by them. How about 4? Is 4 second weirdest? 3? 2? 2 is pretty odd. And anybody want to vote for 1 as their second choice? Yeah, we got tangles. A little orientation. To understand 1 and 2, the most important thing to do is figure out where Bowling Green is. And Bowling Green is there in the southwest in Warren County, the 3rd biggest town in the state. And the legislators were forced to choose choose, they could split Warren County in half and put some in the West District and some in the one further east. Or they could wrap the district around Warren County. And they chose a weird way to wrap it around Warren County because they also wanted Owensboro in Davies County to be in the second district. It's a fixable problem. I'm going to walk over and demonstrate how it gets fixed. You could almost do it with crayons. The northern district up in 4 needs to be next to Jefferson County in blue. I'm not convinced it needs to go all the way over to Ashland and Boyd County. So that's, to me, studying this map, it was weird. But we're closing in on time to ask you to help us with the new maps. So, I want to share how we'd like to invite you to give input. Option easiest for the tech savvy is to go to that address where we have a survey set up. We're asking for your email as a way to identify you. We won't use it for anything else. It's not going near our databases, much less anything anyone else could use. A couple of questions so we know who we've been learning from. And then there will be space for you to put comments on the congressional maps, the House maps, the Senate maps. Other options, if you want them, you can use the paper survey. I will invite people whose voices can project to try projecting their voices and commenting in person. You can send us email, or you can go to the survey later on. It'll be open until November, and we will absolutely love any thought people have, especially on here's how you can make it better. If you have a solution, double points. But if you can just say this is a problem for a community and here's how I know, that would be a big help. Anybody need to yell a question to me about ways to do input? Anybody need a paper survey and doesn't have it? Oh, good. So here's our attempt to redo it, front page of your packet. Give it a moment. Think about places you know and whether they're in a district that would make sense to folks there. And I'll tell you that on the back, on the next page, I did screenshots closing in on the districts that are divided. There are 4 divided districts on this map, counties, pardon, on this map. Jefferson County, our biggest county, is too big to be a congressional district. It has to give up, some people, it has to be divided a bit. Every map has to do it. Here's how I did it. Adding a little bit to the southern district, adding a little bit to the northern district to get that orange-looking Jefferson County district to be a legal size. That's a classic of our challenge. The other 3 divided districts are Grayson in the west, and that's because any combination of counties you do between the Western District and the South Central District, every version you do is not going to be perfect, so you got to split a county. Grayson is who I picked. The last time I tried it, I was able to do it along a highway line, but here I didn't succeed. And Grayson, and then Harrison in the north, and Montgomery a little further east are the other 2 that got split in this map. That's always a judgment call. I may have gotten it wrong. And I do need to mention one other fact before I turn you loose to comment. These maps were drawn with District R, which is publicly available software. You could go draw your own. It works with Census block group, which is a chunk of people. Using block groups, I could not get to super close equality of districts. There's a little more variation here than there should be. When we get ready to recommend to the legislature, I'm going to switch to maptitude. And in maptitude, I can do individual census blocks and really get to the level I'm supposed to. So where I divided a county, what I'm showing you isn't perfect. It's just really good proof that something like that would work. I want to disclose that because I don't want anybody catching me not fitting one person, one vote. That's the set to ask you for input. let me let you take a couple of minutes, look at these, and especially tell us anything you think we got better, and especially anything you think isn't a good idea. Because that's the number one thing we came to get. Yes.
What made you choose those districts to be the ones that were split?
Trying to make the math look good at that point. Jefferson County, I was trying to get as close to the core of the county made sense to people. The part I took out in blue, I've driven a lot. I have some sense of that area feels like it's related to Shelby and Oldham. In the south, Jefferson County has that weird little peninsula sticking down at the bottom. And that was good for map sake. But yeah, the point of deciding I didn't have good criteria, especially on what I'm doing to Montgomery and Harrison, if anybody gives me an idea of what would be better for those folks, there will be dancing with joy at my house. Because at that point, I'm aware I'm walking on other people's eggshells when I try to decide where the split should be. While folks are adding comments, is there anyone else who wants to share a thought or a question? Yes.
We know for sure at this point that Kentucky will either gain a seat or lose a seat based on the 2026 census.
Okay, I'm going to repeat that for everyone else. Great question. Do we know for certain that Kentucky will have 6 congressional seats? There was a possibility going into the census that our population would not justify having 6 seats. The numbers are in. We get 6 seats for another 10 years. If we continue the pattern of the nation grows and we grow more slowly, eventually we might be a 5-district state. If we find some energetic ways to build a bold economy and excite people about moving here, we could become a 7-district state. But that's an excellent starting puzzles that had to get sorted. The census numbers were released in August, and once they came out, it was yes, Kentucky gets 6 congressional seats for another few years. Yes?
Question on, so you, looks like you were proposing splitting Grayson County. It looks like for the Kentucky State House districts, Grayson County is a single political entity in that for purposes of House district in the state. Is there an advantage or a disadvantage to having it be different, having to have, one representative there for the county in one format and then go to the national format?
I really don't know. I suspect that members of Congress would love to have a deal that said, these are the state Senate seats that belong to you, these are the state House seats that belong to you. You can invite all their representatives to meet with you and talk. And that would be efficient. The numbers won't allow it. You can't get 38 into 6 coherently. You can't get 100 into 6 coherently. But that would be elegant if the numbers allowed it. I guess if we dropped to 5, it would become possible for the House. We have 5 congressional seats, 100 would fit tidily. Doing it within the county line rule might kill us all. Though if we drop to 5 in 10 years and I'm still mapping, I might try it. Yes.
So I assume from what you were saying, the reason why Jefferson County doesn't look like Fayette does with the surrounding areas put together because there's just too many people.
Yes, in round numbers, Kentucky congressional seats need 750,000 people. Jefferson has more people than that. Fayette is dramatically smaller than that, even though it's our second biggest county. So Fayette needs to get together with other people. Jefferson needs to let go of some people.
The reason why I asked is because I live like 2 minutes across the line.
Uh-huh.
It's very weird to me that I'm in the same district as someone like 2.5 hours away up in northern.
Yes, I sympathize with that deeply. I will offer you merely a word from my neighbors. I live in Boyle County and my neighbors live in Casey. Currently, their congressional district also touches the Mississippi River. It's a ways out. But yeah, all of them stretch, and trying to reduce the stretch was one of our goals when we talk about compactness, especially the northern district. It no longer stretches all the way over to Ashland. And I think that makes it tighter. There were some Jefferson County folks in that northern district before, and they had a much longer stretch. So that was a big fight in drawing these maps. Yes?
I just want to say, I think it's good that you put Spencer County with the fourth district after Shelby County. So Spencer County and Shelby County are very similar in a lot of ways. I just think that when you put Spencer County with Shelby County and the rest of that district, it helps alleviate, especially from what I'm looking at the map, it looks like you identified Middletown, which is a suburb which is very close to Shelby County. And so that makes sense for all that, because all that area kind of makes sense. And I think I want to say the House representative is from Shelbyville, I want to say. And so that all makes sense now. Because before I was like, why would you split up Spencer County? Because it's a small county for one thing.
Yeah.
And for two, it goes to Shelby County.
Thank you. I was guessing. Now I have a person who has told me that isn't crazy. Yeah, trying to do informed work best I could, but people who live there have a much better sense of how these maps work, and that's exactly where I was hoping for someone to tell me either it works or tell me it doesn't so I can do a better job next time. Anyone else want to share on these? Great. If you have further input hereafter, the form is open until you hit submit, and you can also start another form anytime in the next 2 months if you have other thoughts to share. But now we can move on to the house maps. Now, the house map is kind of hard to look at. It's big. It has 24 split counties the way it is currently done. Of those, 22 had to be divided because their population was too big, and 2 had to be chosen to be split because there were areas where there was no way to draw a district, where you put together 2 or 3 counties and got to the right size. Something had to give. One in the west, one in the east. I want to give you a quick primer on how weird the county rule can get. I actually like it. I like it because it limits how strange the maps can get, no matter what the political motivations are. But when you get to the big counties, strange things can happen. So here's what happened to Madison County, and you can see it on your map, but you have to sort of squint to look this close. Madison got divided into multiple districts. So you got a blue one that's shared with Clark, you got a green one, which includes, I think, most of Richmond. You got a yellow one that stretches way out to the east, and a yellow one that stretches to the west and then south. And you got that pink one that includes Jackson County. And in addition to a part of Madison, it includes a part of Laurel. I was very proud of myself when I realized I didn't have to do that to anybody. But that's the splitting. And actually, if you look at Laurel County, you see how it's got a blue part and a green part? And it's actually got down at the bottom, though it's hard to pull apart. There's a pink part and a funny yellow-orange color. Laurel got split into 5. I got 2 Laurel. And Laurel actually has a part that stretches out into Clay and Leslie, and a part that stretches into Knox, and a part that stretches into Whitley, and a part that it shares with Pulaski. Some of the best feedback I got early on worrying about maps was from Senator Al Robinson, who said, Laurel doesn't have a representative. It's a big county and it has no representative. And actually, Pulaski stretches a bit further. So Pulaski's got a district it shares with Lincoln, and a district it shares with Russell and Cumberland and Clinton, and a district it shares with Wayne and McCreary, and it's got no district, it's just in Pulaski County. So when we looked at the maps and I started trying to say the county seat gets a district in the county, I was trying not to do that. Here's a fast overview of how we did our maps. In order to get the colors to work, I did them by regions. So you can see there's a central region where we're standing right now, and an eastern one and a southern one. To west of that, there's a big region that includes Jefferson County and has 25 districts in it, and then there's a northern south. And the maps I brought you, I planned to bring you those two, the central one and the southern one. And that's not what we gave you in print. This is called when you make events happen on short notice, you make mistakes. And I'm sorry I made that mistake. But you can see here the central and the southern, and I'm going to invite you to look at a little zoom in on this. So in this big combination, it's actually Madison sharing a district with Fayette. So you've got that pink district right in the middle. But Madison has that district. Madison still has a district in that blue color to include Richmond. It's got a district that's going to the east. It's got a district to the south and a district to the southwest. This is called using counties to solve problems for other counties. Big counties are the only place you can go when the districts don't add up right. So Madison lost a set, but I fought hard to get Richmond right. And anybody who knows Richmond who looks at my map and says, the parts that think of themselves as Richmond aren't on your map right, that will be golden for me in getting that back. If you zoom in further on Madison, you can see the divisions better, and that's in your materials. That combination district with Fayette County, I would have loved not to do that, but I couldn't get either county divided up the right way. Fayette, we've got 3 districts inside New Circle Road and 3 districts basically outside New Circle that are entirely in the district, and then a bunch of sharing. So there's sharing with, who's Brown today? Sharing with Bourbon and with a little bit of Scott, sharing with Clark, sharing with Madison, sharing with Woodford. Yes, for those of you who are used to driving in from the south and the west, you can see Nicholasville Road on the map. You can see US 60 on the map. I'm hoping that's better for the residents, but again, if we have folks who know what's not right there, that would be great. And now, we would love to have more input if you have thoughts to share. And we can have a bit of quiet time while you look and input things. But if you have a thought or a question, I would love to see hands. Yes?
Can I ask, what are the issues with the past House districts? They use up?
Oh, what are the issues with them?
Yeah, in the current.
Okay, in the current set, I think the primary issue in House districts is how they divided the big counties. They had to be divided. They didn't have to be divided with the spidery, snaky things that wrap around things. My least favorite map on the current set is what they did to Warren County, which has a nice, coherent Bowling Green district, and then it has tentacles wrapped around it on both sides. I don't understand why that was needed. I don't understand why Georgetown got cut to pieces with 2 other districts cutting right into the middle of Georgetown. They didn't have to divide the counties. I think they could be done more coherently. And what I'm hoping is that these maps show you can do it in a way that works better for the residents. I don't know why people did it. There are 2 classic reasons to draw lines that look as complicated as what we got in the divided counties. One is just to shift the partisan balance of who lives there, and the other is to make a district that would work for a named person that you want to win. I worked really hard on not even thinking about the places where I knew who the reps were and how it would work. There were a dozen places where I knew I was having an impact and made myself stop. And when I did Boyle County, if there were two things, I always chose the one I liked less. I feel guilty about my Senate map because I like the district I'm in. I may have to spend another 2 hours trying to find another way to do it where I don't like it as much. But those are the two things I can make sense of why you would draw as complicated a line as some of the ones that were drawn in the current map. And I think that could be done noticeably better and could have been done before. Setting down what's good for your party, I think, is a way to protect citizens. Setting down what's good for candidates you like is an even more important way. Just try not to think about it, assign people where that's not their main concern to work on it.
Hi. I really like the way you've redrawn northern Madison County into Fayette County. I'm from northern Madison County, like right across Clays Ferry Bridge, and it's so similar that makes sense to me because I've never understood why it's split the way it is. So that's my feedback on that.
That's two of my slightly informed hunches, greatly improved by having people who live there tell me there's some sense to it. Thank you again. So, okay, the person who holds the mic now, have a question, or you want to pass it over?
I just also like to add that the fact that Richmond and Berea are put together makes a whole lot of sense, especially with the overflow of traffic.
I wish that were true. I spent an hour on that one too. My dad taught in Berea. But Richmond, the main part of Berea is in fact in the green part of that map. It's in the district with Jackson and with Clay. And I didn't think that suited how the people there thought of who were the neighbors they'd want to work with. But Jackson and Clay needed a bit of population, and that was the map that would do it. So I'm sorry that I don't have that thing you would have liked.
Can you go back to that map?
Sure. Oh, where is it? Okay. Notwithstanding what it says, I'm confident there's a slice of Berea. Most of Berea is in fact in Jackson based on the road lines, but I see exactly why you thought I'd done what would be the most sensible thing, I think, for that community. But all of us sometimes end up with neighbors that are not our strongest cultural connection, because otherwise we have to be unjust to someone else. And that doesn't have enough of Berea where it should be. But extra thanks for pushing me on. Look again. Yes. I got here and then there. Sir in the white mask and then the garnet mask.
Just a sort of general question here. Can you talk a little bit about permissible versus impermissible reasons for drawing a district? And so you talked about some of the odder shaped districts earlier.
Okay. In the constitutional literature, the number one impermissible reason is to discriminate on the basis of race. Then we have a tension because to honor the Voting Rights Act and create districts of opportunity, there's a little struggle about you need to look at the racial boundaries and where people live. That's the main rule we have on what is and isn't allowed other than size. There's been a huge constitutional fight that's probably over for federal purposes about whether there's an illegal form of partisan gerrymandering. Many attempts to come up with a rule the Supreme Court would accept, to say you can't do that. My favorite, there was a Maryland case recently that basically said, you were using all kinds of data that gave you hints about bipartisanship to district me, and you shouldn't have done it. That was a First Amendment argument about freedom of speech, freedom of press, a bit of freedom of association. Supreme Court didn't go for that either. So we had a recent Supreme Court ruling that said we're not going to take any more cases saying you paid too much attention to party. That pushed it back to the states. We've had a glorious Pennsylvania case saying, under our Constitution, elections are supposed to be free and fair, and the way you have drawn these lines for party advantage, don't do that. Pennsylvania had a map, I almost wish I'd brought the slide, that had a district that is referred to as Donald Kicking Goofy. Because it is so, that it's like a Rorschach test and you can see cartoon characters. After the Supreme Court came through, their state Supreme Court came through, they redid it with much more coherent districts. State constitutional cases are the best ones at this point for any further argument about those rules. Kentucky has a similar constitutional clause. We don't yet have a similar ruling. And we'll see whether the maps that we get allow a case that would try whether Kentucky wants to say our Constitution requires the same thing. I would be happy to help lawyer that case in terms of elections should be free and equal and then free and fair, and that means you don't draw the lines to advantage someone and not disadvantage someone else. But we don't have that ruling yet. And that's the cutting edge on fighting through the courts for better maps. I don't know how that would go. Pennsylvania had a beautiful argument that began with our Constitution is older than the federal one. And they've had many, many very, very old quotes from people who were in on the Constitution. I don't know if Kentucky could bring that much history. We could also say, we stole the idea from Pennsylvania. We should do it like Pennsylvania. That hasn't been fought out yet, so really we're still back at don't discriminate based on race. Do be intentional about not diluting opportunities for non-white voters. Endless, how do you put those two together? In Kentucky, Jefferson County is the only place you can draw a district that has a voting age majority of any version of people other than white folks. But in Fayette County, the blue district is relatively diverse. And I did think about that as I was figuring out. I gotta go out in a circle somewhere. Where do I go? I went with some awareness of that.
Can you hear me through here?
Yeah, yes.
So far we've been mostly talking about drawing the districts in terms of the compactness and considering the county rule and that sort of thing. But earlier you mentioned, and you're specifically thinking about those majority minority districts or the right of racial minorities to have input, and then also the level of competitiveness for the district. So I was wondering whether you generated any maps or any kind of metrics that would allow us to compare how your maps would vary based on these other characteristics such as competitiveness or majority minority access versus the existing maps.
Excellent question to which the answer is no. Backstory on life as a map maker. I was working in Maptitude. I had all the maps done Saturday of Labor Day weekend. Maptitude crashed on me. I switched software. I got these maps done 2 days ago. So I have not done that analysis. I will say for Kentucky, in terms of our partisan splits, there are fairly few places where that would be insightful. We've got a big sense of how strongly Republican our state tilts. And that, for me, created a little freedom to not think too hard about the partisan advantages, because I couldn't do anything that added to the partisan competitiveness, which let me spend more time on compactness. In a map like Fayette County or Madison County, that probably wasn't an ideal choice. So I'll take that as feedback to think some more. Thank you.
I am specifically wondering about the 6th district because it doesn't look as weird maybe as some of the others, but the last time they districted it was specifically the 6th district that was subject of the gerrymandering, decried as the benching on the Lifetime Employment Act. Of course, it didn't work out that way for him after the election happened and he lost his seat to Andy Barr, but that 6th district was the one that was specifically the target of some of the gerrymandering efforts to try to make it more reliably Democratic. So I was just wondering about sort of how this plays out in terms of the competitiveness of the
Yeah.
sample seats. I mean, it is possible you could draw, they didn't yet, but draw a local district, for example, that would actually make it Republican probably, and actually
Yeah.
take out that Democratic.
You could do a slice like that. There is a horrible possibility of splitting Jefferson in three, in a way that splits Fayette in three and splits Bowling Green in three. I haven't tried to mention that in public. I don't want to give anybody ideas, but you could, if your goal was to make Kentucky not 1 and 5, make it 6 and 6, there probably is a way. I will say, I think it's dangerous to think that way too much. Exactly from your story about the central district, I'm showing it here in pink, but back in the earlier map, the state had it here in green. That was designed to keep in Chandler in Congress, it failed. I will say in the Kentucky House map, it was drawn by Democrats trying to hold on to a slim majority. What happened instead, because they had all these barely Democratic districts, is a flood came through in 2016 and went over a huge number of their dikes, and probably really a larger Republican majority. And I look at that and think, let's try not to spend too much time on that exactly because making it work for a set of counties and then letting them fight it out looks to me fairer to the voters. But I haven't analyzed it, so I don't know what I did. I will say when I did my congressional map the first time, it had been in print for several days before I realized that I had dislocated 3 members of Congress. I had put 3 of them in my southern district and dislocated the northern Kentucky congressman into the eastern district. I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't even know I'd done it for days and days. But it is worth knowing what one has done. And I haven't checked on that yet, so I can't answer the question. You take us back into House world.
Another question?
Yes.
Okay. I have to nitpick just for a second about the huge invisible elephant that's standing on the stage staring at you. You said that one of the key principles in forming districts was not to discriminate on the basis of race or ethnicity. But of course, when you create districts then that specifically favor African American or Hispanic minorities and guarantee them a favored opportunity to choose a candidate of their liking, that is racial discrimination. It may serve a tremendously important social purpose, but it is still racial discrimination. Now, people are not going to want to talk to you about that, almost any place in the United States today. But it will be in the minds of legislators when you go to try to talk to them about districting and districting procedures and fair districting and that sort of thing. They'll know it's there.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice. That is exactly how Chief Justice Roberts argues the points. Is whether you are conscious of how race works in America or not. Remember I said the Magnificent 14th? I think the 14th is where we fight, and when we fight on the 14th, we're fighting Gettysburg. We're having an actual 2 perspectives, and I'll put in the other one, which is, we know what was done to our maps for decades. To figure out what we do now to move forward as a multiracial democracy, we are at a point where not knowing where the issues are is going to work for us. Under the Voting Rights Act, the only required step in Kentucky would be not diluting the black vote in Jefferson County where there have been districts of opportunity. I paid more attention to how my maps worked to think about Fayette, but there is no majority black district in Fayette. It is not possible to draw it. It is not possible to draw a majority black congressional district anywhere in the state. So it's a very soft attention here to pay attention to not casually drawing a line that breaks up opportunities for black voters, which are not very strong opportunities because our state is way short on diversity. Any more thoughts for the House? Okay, I can show you the Senate. The state Senate map is way simpler. Only 3 counties had to be divided in the current map, and that's Jefferson and Fayette, and way up in the north, Kenton County. The biggest of the 3 top northern counties had to be split. I do think in this map, the place where you could see partisan concern is if you look across the east and you see those stripes that look like columns. That's quite a set, and that's sort of maximizing drive time for a candidate who wants to campaign across the territory, for a voter who wants to go hear a candidate campaign, for a voter who wants to go visit a legislator. That is a tough way to do it. There was some openness about adding counties to districts that needed to have more people, and just adding the next one on that string of pearls to make these work last time. I don't think it can work this time because of how much has changed in the population of Eastern Kentucky. I think the legislature is probably stuck with, we have to do a pretty complete redo. If you added 2 counties to any one of those long stretches, you get to the Ohio River. It's getting tough to keep that going. I will mention one other thing. If any of you recognize Casey County as that pink county that's sort of shaped like Texas in the middle of the state, that's the one I said had its congressional representative also representing people who live on the Mississippi River. Follow Casey County's district up that map. It goes way north, and part of that district is in Jefferson County. That's sort of the maximum stretching out to be really odd for the voters. Trying not to do that was one of my goals. I can at least say I'm confident it could be done. It could be done on the 2010 numbers, it can be done on the 2020 numbers. Our map again is split. I brought you the eastern half of it to invite your comments. You can see I don't have strings of pearls. That's most of what you can make out. And you'll see that the orange district, farthest west there, I live in that district. I visit those counties on a regular basis. I know people in all of those counties, and that's why I feel guilty. If the next map comes out and Boyle County is at the center, I will feel better. Because I'm trying to be an honest map maker, and everybody has to wrestle their own opinions. So I'm trying to tilt bias against myself. You will see Fayette County discernibly less divided. You will see Madison County in a relatively coherent district. But let you look and tell me things. Same input plan, plus hollering, plus microphones. So what do you think? I'm going to pull mine up here because I didn't bring a screenshot to keep it up on the camera. This is called The Thing I Got Wrong Getting This Done 2 days ago. You will see Fayette County does have to be divided. If you look on your own copy of the map. But in my version, Fayette's only sharing districts with 2 other counties, one being Madison, the other being Jessamine. And if you look over to the northern part, you can see northern Kentucky has to be divided up a bit, but not vastly. Oh, I will mention one other thing I forgot from the House map. I butchered Boyd County. That's Ashland. Very bad things happened. Anyone who finds me a way out of doing that, I will cheer extra. I could not find a combination of counties that would create a district for Rowland and a district for Boyd that didn't involve doing bad things to Boyd. So anyone who looks at that and thinks I did bad things, yell at me. Anyone who can think of a way not to do it, I will send you cake. But take a look at the Senate maps. See if they're okay. On this map, Floyd County was treated well. It's on the House map that I did bad things. Yes.
I was gonna say, so I live in Boone County, so right over by Kent County, and I actually do think that you split up that county pretty well over there in that area. I mean, yeah, that's how I'm around me.
So Hannah and I both live, she lives in Shelby County, I live in Boone County. And I think that map makes a whole lot more sense than slapping parts of Shelby and Oldham County into the Louisville Senate districts. Because even though they're fairly similar in the metropolitan area, the outer parts of Oldham County and the outer parts of Shelby County are very similar. So I think putting that as its own district makes a lot of sense.
That's good. You see that something bad happened in Spencer. It's not horrible, but Spencer is that weird blue peninsula sticking out into space because things didn't add up exactly right. And I was trying to be pretty good to counties.
Yeah, I was about to say, people in Frankfort aren't gonna be happy with Spencer because they're not similar.
Yeah, we are holding a farm right there. I am racing for them to tell me
They ain't gonna be
the
happy
problems
with
with
that.
it.
But also, I was gonna say, I think you split up, from what I can tell, you split up Louisville pretty well, because there is a very different idea from east of Louisville to west of Louisville, and so that cut of like, I wanna say it's like quarters almost, from what I can tell from here. So like,
It's more than that, but the red stands out.
Yeah.
And I did, the Watterson, I used as a boundary, and I paid attention where the Snyder was.
Yeah.
And sort of the equivalent of big rivers in past years, that they're a major thing that is productive. If you imagine being out canvassing for a candidate, the folks are going to hand you back to say, then you need to go through the underpass and around. I think that has a similar effect on people's ability to communicate. So I tried to hold to that. But Jefferson has a bunch of districts. They have 17 that are inside the county and 4 that are shared with other counties, because they're huge.
Yeah, I was about to say, my family owns a store in, like a small business in Jefferson County, which is like the middle of it.
Mhm.
You can keep, it's a small business, so you have everyone coming in and sharing their thoughts, and their ideas are, and beliefs and everything like that are different from the West End, and it's just how the community acts and everything like that, so it just makes sense.
And it is always a challenge between the people think alike and want to be together. And people should be in districts where they kind of have to hash it out, and they can't just go into their separate corners and not talk to each other. But that's the balance that's always in the mix. Yes?
This is more so just like a general question. As we see like city centers and like urban populations continue to grow, is it reasonable to assume that we'll see larger cities like Lexington, Bowling Green, their districts that they're actually in become smaller and more split up over time?
Yes, and let me rephrase that for you, because I have a language, there's always a language problem. The language problem is when you say smaller, do you mean fewer people or less space?
Less space.
Yes,
like
it
less
is
space.
definitely true that in all the cases, even 10 years ago, there were 24 districts you could make combining counties that weren't part of those big city centers. Now there are 16. Right, the population is becoming substantially more compact in a few places, and those places have to be divided more to get to fair size. Way back in the history of this, in our Kentucky Supreme Court cases, they just didn't redo the divisions year after year. So coming into the 20th century, they would leave the districts the way they were, which built rural power. Right, it kept power in the rural areas even though the population was more urban. And the Supreme Court cases were, you have to redistrict. And yeah, you have to redistrict places besides Louisville. There was actually one year the legislature tried, we'll only change Louisville. And the courts had to tell them, cut it out. And that took multiple rounds to get that done. If the General Assembly puts redistricting off, does it slowly through the next session and has it applied in 2024, that will also sustain some rural power for a couple more years. And I'm not taking a side because I'm from Danville on the small places versus the big ones. But we should talk frankly about how that's happening and who's losing faces. Yeah, the redistricting and the trends are strong. in the red and blue map that Cindy showed you. The other thing you can see besides what you call urban areas is you can pretty much see the interstate highways on the map. If it's got an interstate, it's red or pink. If it doesn't have an interstate, it's much more likely to be a shade of blue losing population. And that's disrupting people all over the place. I think it's why the maps have to change pretty sharply coming into this session. Is there one more thought? Cindy, you want to come on up and give people the remaining thoughts? Cindy's going to tell you a little more about our work for Fair Maps and add one more encouragement to input because we love input. Is there another question? Good.
All right, thank you. Very helpful feedback. It's always good to hear what people are thinking, and I really love the fact that you're digging into those maps and really looking closely. Thank you so much. So we want your input. If you didn't have a chance to dig as deeply as you want and want to go deeper, you can go online, look at our maps online. The survey is online, the feedback form, and encourage friends and family, anybody else who might be interested to do that. You can email comments to us if you don't want to do it in the survey form by sending things to info@lwvky.org, or you can use that tiny URL to get to the links. We are seeking input, we're seeking transparency, and we're seeking broad support. The ideal, of course, would be maps that are passed with bipartisan support. In today's world, it's a pipe dream maybe, but we still think that's the ideal. If folks were working together to create really good maps, that would be terrific. We are suggesting, if you want to have more influence, you could ask your legislators, legislative leadership, as well as your own legislators, to provide opportunity for public input. You can call them at the 800 number, 800-372-7181. You can go to the LRC website, just type in LRCKY, and you can get legislators and their email addresses and send them messages. You could also sign our petition asking for open, transparent processes and opportunities for public input. That is on our website. It's also, we have a hard copy at the desk. If you would rather do it in hard copy, you can sign up there. And then we encourage you to talk to friends, family, colleagues, and encourage them to also participate. Again, we welcome feedback, info@lwvky.org. Our phone number is on our website. You can call us if you want. We'll be happy to talk to you. And then you can use that tiny URL map for the survey form. The QR code goes to a program we're using called Outreach Circle, and it lists all the things you can do, from registering to vote to having input in the redistricting process. And when other issues come up or other events come up, it would be there too. So if you'd like to do that, go to that QR code and you can find more information. With that, I think we are just about at time. And want to make final comments? Thank you so much. We really appreciate your participation today.
Our guest speakers and the League of Women Voters for putting this presentation on today. I think we are all thinking more deeply now about the redistricting and reapportionment process now. So thank you very much. And just a quick reminder, Constitution Day proper is tomorrow, so please walk on by, have a corner tomorrow. We're going to be at the side near the dining hall. You got to get lunch tomorrow. Why not stop by and register to vote if you're not registered already? Whether you're in state or out of state, we will do the best to help you. Also, we'll have candy and pocket constitutions and more fun stuff as well. I think you'll find that we have some candy on your way out as well. So thank you so much. It's been a great audience. Again, thank you to our speakers and to the league.